Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new episode of Building a Harmonious Family with Nevin and Bajalac. And today our guest is coming from US. His name is Jeffrey Frantz, and Jeffrey is a father. He's a grandfather. He has been married for 37 years, and he's going to share with us some tips on happy and long-lasting marriage today, and also parenting. He's a life coach, meditation practitioner, and also leadership trainer. He used to be a pastor as well. So a lot of experience to hear in this episode. So make sure to stay with us till the end. Jeffrey, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks. I'm honored to be here.
It is my pleasure. So I love to ask my guests to share a little bit with us about your journey, your, let's say, marriage journey, your family journey, parenting journey, just in a couple of minutes. Maybe there's some specific stories, some struggles that happen in the past. So then we will see how did you overcome them, so we can help those who are listening and going through a similar thing.
Sure. Yeah, I think I really knew at a pretty young age that I was meant to be married. I don't know how to describe that. Just a sense of needing to belong, I guess, to someone, to walk life together with someone. And um, I had gone through school, college, had just started my first job. Actually, I studied originally to be a newspaper reporter and editor. Actually, I was going to be a writer. I was going to write the great American novel, I think. That's what I started out wanting to do. And I was going to be a newspaper writer, just to put food on the table in the meantime. And as it turns out, had wound up going to seminary instead and served as a church pastor for about 20 years. But the funny thing is actually, is while I was working with the newspaper, that's when I met who would be my wife. Her name's Brenda, and we were married in June of 1984. And probably one of the biggest pivots or challenges is when I had decided to go to seminary. Felt the call to go to seminary and serve as a church pastor. And Brenda likes to joke that she did not marry a pastor, but at one point, but she fell into the that life just fine. She was good with it. And actually, when I finally passed that, I was a journalist for 5 years, and when I passed that point in my vocation as a pastor, that was kind of strange. Like suddenly I was a pastor longer than I was a newspaper writer, and that was the world I knew, was newspaper writing. So so yeah, and the rest is history. We had 3 lovely children. They're all adults now, out of the home. One is married, one is getting married this October. uh,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. We're all excited. And uh, yeah, the rest is history. We continue on. We're planning to actually, we would like to renew our vows at our 40th anniversary coming up in just a few years, and we would like to do that in Ireland. That's we both have ancestors from Ireland, and said we would like to. We
Beautiful.
always wanted to visit. I'm sorry.
Beautiful. I said beautiful. I think it's going to
Yeah,
be a beautiful, it's a beautiful idea. So I hope you're going to
yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah, well, we're hoping that things will continue to open and stay open post COVID to do that. And I was just reading that things are continuing to open up, even in Europe. And we had, we were starting to make the plans. We got about 3 years to plan it. So,
Yes. So we all hope that in 3 years the world will go back to normal.
oh my gosh.
So tell me, I love, you've been a pastor, so you must help so many people with their marriages and some struggles. And what would you say is the number one struggle people have in their marriage or their family, out of your experience?
Hmm. Well, statistically, it's supposedly centers around finances. And not so much that there's not enough money in the family, but who makes the decisions for the family finances, and who controls that. and which really leads to a power struggle. And isn't that that's the human situation, isn't it? It always
Yes.
seems to go back as to who's making who's calling the shots. Yeah, who's making the decision, and that winds up in families as well. I think for me, as I've looked back, even since the years I'd been a pastor, and what's that been? I think the last time I served a church was like 5 or 6 years ago. I don't keep track of those things very well. I just move on with life. Um, but I really think so much of it seems to come down to understanding what marriage is, and being prepared for it. I know as a church pastor, I was very much involved with colleagues who were trying to bring premarital preparation back, call it premarital counseling. I never liked that term because it always sounds like you already got a problem. I need counseling. Premarital preparation, I think, is the better term. But anyway, that's semantics. The point is that um, a lot of couples go into marriage not really understanding what that relationship is about. And when we take the vow for better or for worse, we don't realize how bad worse can be. And it kind of blindsides them. And it puts a lot of pressure, a lot of stress to the breaking point. And if they're not ready, the marriage can suffer and fail.
So can you put some light on us? What marriage is? Like you said, people don't understand what marriage is. And I agree, because working with a lot of families, I realize that there's some mistakes that we make. We expect the person will change, the situations will change, and so on. So,
Right.
but I would like to hear from you. I mean, I'm not married yet. I'm looking forward to build my family. I know also what I'm looking for exactly. And I would love to learn also from you, myself, and also others, what marriage is. And what are some things we should really expect and understand about that relationship?
Oh, sure. I do come from a obvious evangelical Christian perspective, but I think it works. uh, the um, the whole idea of covenant, and in this case, is somewhat different from a legal contract where you enter into a contract as a business person, for example, and you're wanting to protect your resources, your livelihood, and your rights in this relationship, this legal relationship. But for me, the idea of covenant, and especially marriage as a covenant, it's not what I get out of it; it's what I give to it. The energy goes a whole different direction. uh, that idea of self-sacrifice. Here's an example. A lot of the quote traditional, and I know I just did the air quotes that they're not going to see on the podcast. Just imagine, everybody, I'm doing air quotes here. The traditional marriage vows, you hear them say, I take you as my lawfully wedded husband. I take you as my lawfully wedded wife. Let's reframe that. I give myself to you as your lawfully wedded husband or your lawfully wedded. I am giving my life to you. As a matter of fact, my service in the church was in the United Church of Christ, and that was actually the language of our marriage ceremony, which, by the way, was very beautiful. But it was that whole idea of giving. And as my own pastor, when I was getting married, as he put it, it's not a sharing of 50-50. Here's another one. I'm going in this 50-50, we're going to meet. No, it's got to be 100-100. I am entering into this 100%, and my spouse is entering into this relationship 100%. So I think that's a real important idea for anybody going into marriage. Understanding you are giving yourself totally, you're giving your life totally to another human being. And as far as any kind of social engagement, that's going to be the biggest decision you will ever make in your life.
Wow, I agree. And I love this perception shift of, I give myself, and also it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. Because I think as long as we are in this, I give, then I expect in return, it's more of a transactional relationship. It's not really, giving yourself to this relationship. And it doesn't even matter if you don't get the same amount. Like there should not even be that kind of, I give and now I expect in return. I think
Right.
you will agree. You will agree. So tell us a
Right.
little
Well,
bit more. Tell me, yes.
oh no, I agreeing with you, and and I think it also goes back to that notion of what love is. Let's face it, a lot of folks enter into marriage with these rose-colored glasses that this romantic notion of love. Which, by the way, hey, I'm the biggest romantic on the planet Earth here. I get it. Yeah, I love romance, but entering into a marriage, this goes beyond feeling. Love in its truest form, in its truest sense, is an act of will. And I think that is hugely important. Feelings come and go. Feelings will rise and they will fall. There are some days you're just not going to feel in love. you know Feelings are liars. They're very deceptive. you know you got to watch them. You can't trust them. But when you're thinking of love, real love, that you're giving to a spouse, to a soulmate, to a life mate, um, that's got to be an act of will. And when you look at the classical forms of love, the love of friendship, the phileo is from the Greek, that brotherly love, or eros, the romantic love, or even the sexual love. But there is that agape love, that love of God, as it were. That is a decision you make. That's an action you take, and it doesn't. You pointed out so well. It doesn't depend on what comes back to me. If I have a friend and after a while my friend isn't answering my phone calls, or I have a girlfriend and she keeps breaking the dates with me, I'm not getting the attention back that I'm giving, eventually that relationship's going to fail, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
eventually you're just going to say, hey, enough is enough. But in a marriage where that's based on the agape, self-giving love, it doesn't matter what comes back. I continue to love. You can't stop me from loving. I'm not saying that marriage isn't in trouble. It's still,
Yeah.
we may need to work some things out, but it doesn't just go away just because I didn't get what I want.
Yes, and I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't, like, you should just give, and not, get anything in return. But I'm saying our
Right.
focus should not be in expecting the result,
Exactly.
in expecting that. We
Right.
shouldn't be givers. We're naturally givers. We're
Hmm.
carers. We are uplifters. So it's not about, oh, I'm giving so I can get in return.
Right.
Right. So I
Exactly.
recently worked with a client and she really wanted to get married. She was in a long relationship. She was in a marriage before, and it was sense of security for her. And her
Hmm.
partner didn't believe in institution of marriage. So they've
Ah,
been together for a couple of years and we started working together. And I told her, you have to let go of this because you're pushing, and the more you're pushing, the more he's pulling, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic. So it was so incredible. And in a couple of weeks, she just decided she loved this relationship so much, and it's a very good relationship. And then she called me and she said he just proposed to me, and it was such a surprise, but it was a beautiful thing,
yes.
really. So it's really interesting that all the work has to be on us. And I think when people take that responsibility of themselves in the relationship and their emotions and their feel, doesn't mean we're not going to get hurt or disappointed or
Right.
have expectations, but
Yeah,
understand.
guaranteed.
Yes. But understand that as well. Next question I want to ask you, Jeffrey, is children, right? Kids.
Right.
So do you see that kids sometimes make a marriage either stronger or the marriages broke apart when the kids are there, right? If the relationship is not
Hmm.
strong already. What was your observation there?
I don't think I would necessarily put it in that framework. Kids obviously are going to put stresses on a marriage. I mean, that's a huge thing. Another human being coming into this family dynamic. It's just you and your spouse, and then all of a sudden this other child, and the family dynamic is going to be different. The energy flow is going to be very different in that family. You got brand new responsibilities, and again, talking about finances, the cost of raising a child. I even lost track of what the cost is now to raise a child at 18, but it's enormous. you know but I think it will probably, having a child, for me anyway, is going to really more reveal the nature of that marriage. Obviously, it's going to put new forces on it, new stresses, but in the end, it's not going to necessarily strengthen or weaken the marriage as much as it's going to reveal what is the strength of that marriage already.
Yes, I like how you said that. And yes, exactly. So what would you say to the people who are getting married now? What are some tips you would give them to have, 40-year anniversary of a happy marriage? What is some advice you would give them? And that includes, the relationship, the children. What are some tips that you can share with us?
One thing that came to my mind, a point that you had raised, and it just led me to think this is that understanding of who is it that you're marrying, know your partner, your would-be spouse. And then there it goes back to premarital preparation. It's just huge. I've used instruments in my premarital preparation assessments that had that generated conversation, which I think is hugely important. It raised issues that the couples had never even thought of. And it might be finances, it might be sexual relationship, it might be dynamics with the in-laws, which is always interesting. But it raises questions that they can start to get into conversation with. If they're in agreement, say 20% on this matter, we might want to talk. You're only in agreement on 20% on family dynamics. Okay, so let's talk about that. What's getting in the way of that, and let's celebrate where you're 80 or 90% in agreement. So know your would-be spouse. Take an assessment. Find someone who will. If you're getting married by a pastor, most of them have some kind of premarital preparation training and instrument in place. And if not, go to a community counselor, find somebody. So that would be a big one.
Thank you. And I agree. I noticed when I worked with families, obviously I was young, so I didn't have that experience. And also my family dynamic when I grew up wasn't so harmonious. So I think that's also what pushed me to really be passionate about this topic and understand relationships and marriages. So I started asking my clients and people, like when they will point something that either break relationship or it's bothering them, like you said, maybe finances, maybe the way they're raising the child, maybe whatever it is. And I asked them, well, did you ever talk about this before your marriage? Or did you ever, did you know that, were you aware that this person is like this? If a person sits at the couch and plays video games and they don't have set goals, right? And you're marrying this person and you have a belief, I will change this person, or they will change, they will become more responsible, where the chances for that are not so big. So like you said, you have to understand who are you marrying to and not expect that this person, people do change. I believe in that, but they really have to be ready for a change and, want to change. So this is one of the things. And second one is really, I noticed parents don't discuss. I studied and I work with parents and families with special needs. And nobody ever brought a topic, what we're going to do if our child has a special need. It's a very difficult topic. It's a very big disappointment. It's a lot of guilt, a lot of stress.
Yes.
And a lot of marriages, they just couldn't sustain, that kind of, they didn't know how to deal now with this whole things happening in their emotions. So I think, like you said, talking about it, writing, discussing all different topics with your partner. And if you need help from a coach or a counselor, pastor, someone like that, I think that can definitely help.
Right. Yeah, that communication is huge, and a good preparation program will do that. Mine, the one I use was involved a lot of active listening, a lot of conflict resolution, and in fact, we would take a place of low agreement, a topic like finances, for example, and that would we would turn into a living laboratory. Okay, you're going to go work on this, and here are some conflict resolution and communication techniques to see how this works for you. And I don't want to give the impression either, and I throw this out as a caution, not just because of my faith background, but because, again, socially, I'm not at all suggesting that couples immediately cohabitate, that they immediately move in together. Statistically, again, couples who had moved in together without any, at least without any immediate plans for marriage, it actually turned out to be there's some dynamic at work that those marriages more often than not failed, more often than the ones that had waited to cohabitate after marriage. And the more I reflected on that, I think it goes back again a lot to that communication. The couples will say, "Oh, I'm going to get to know my partner by moving in with him or her," and that doesn't necessarily mean the communication is taking place. That doesn't necessarily mean they're learning techniques of active listening and of conflict resolution and assertiveness and things like that. And so when you add then, once they are married, and you add in now the dynamic of the forces of now being in this, yes, legal contract and a spiritual contract, just, it takes it to the breaking point. It's not at all what they expected, and they don't know how to handle it.
Well, I mean, these are such incredible insights and really help me also, no matter, it really helped me look at some things from a different perspective and appreciate some things more. Jeffrey, tell us, as we are wrapping this episode, how can people connect with you? We're going to make sure that we put links here in the description of this episode. Right. But tell us a little bit more now, and how can people reach out to you, connect with you, and how you can help them?
Sure. I do have a Facebook page, and also the name of my company, if I'm allowed to give it to you, because that's where most of my communication comes through, is New Horizons Life and Leadership Development. I tell people that's a long name, but it gets you there. New Horizons Life and Leadership Development, and you can find my webpage, which is always under construction. It's that name, New Horizons Life and Leadership Development.com. All put together. And I do have a personal Facebook page, business Facebook page by the same name. I'm on Instagram, Thumbtack, or I'm sorry, I do have an Instagram account. I'm just building that. Don't go there.
Okay.
I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn is the account to go to, or I'm also on Thumbtack. And did you want an email address as well?
No, we will put the links in the description. So everyone who are listening to this, they can just go and click directly when you open the description. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time and all of these insights. It was really priceless. And I want to thank everyone for listening, for being here. Make sure to subscribe to your podcast, download this episode, share with others so they can benefit as well, so we can continue building the families in what they're supposed to be, right? A little bit more harmony, yes. One day at a time. Thank you once again, everyone, for listening, and I will see you in the next episode.